Today, we're going to recap this past weekend's Crystal Lake Half Marathon, a race that really wasn't supposed to happen on my calendar, but it did, and I learned a lot, and got humbled. So, before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're subscribed, watch the content. Thanks so much, love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates. And you kind of figure out the results of this race before this video gets released, kind of a heads up kind of thing. So, without further ado, let's begin. Let's talk about why the race happened, and some of the other elements that kind of got associated with it. So, first and foremost, I did this race last year as a preparation rust buster kind of block for the Chicago Marathon, as we are about a month and a couple of days away from said Chicago Marathon, which, again, the goal for that is a sub 3, and in order to do the sub 3, you got to put in a lot of work during the summer of slow, rigorous miles, but time on your feet. And usually by the Crystal Lake Half Marathon, I have a good idea of what may or may not happen on race day. So this is the second time I've done this race, as I mentioned. The first year I ran it, I did run my half marathon PR, which is 1 hour 26 and 30 seconds. And I did end up taking 8th place overall and 3rd in age group. So that's also worth noting. I still haven't picked up my finisher medal for this race, or my age group medal, whatever. I like age group finishes, kind of gives me a fun idea of where I stand kind of like in the local area. But at the same time, just kind of nice knowing what this time is, because last year I saw this time and thought, okay, we're about 3.5 minutes stronger from the halfway point of a sub 3 full marathon, and from there it's better to assess whether I should be running slower in the first half or like how to pick up the second half, and I have an idea of how to do things from there. Granted, potato courses, the Crystal Lake Marathon had some more hills than the Chicago Marathon, but again, it's just a confidence booster knowing this kind of result. So what you're probably wondering now at this point is, what did I run during this half marathon? Well, I gotta know this for sure, because I keep seeing different results on it. Oh, there we go. I got it now. I've got it now. I ran a 1:29:05. 8th overall. 3rd age group. Can you believe this? I've got duplicate results down here at the bottom, but the times are completely different. Right there, and then right there. So I did not PR this weekend. As a matter of fact, I feel like I did so much worse, and I know why I did worse. And yeah, as I mentioned before, as I mentioned in a different video actually, we're not doing so much of this. We're trying to do some more of this, right? And I think if you watched my videos before, I'm pretty critical of my running on this channel, but also can be not maybe boastful, but probably high on my horse in some instances of something really cool or something awesome happens. In this case, we have to be extremely critical, because this should have been a race that I should have done better at. I don't think I would have won this race in first place, but based on things that happened late spring, early summer, I should be in a way better spot than I currently am. So let's start with what went wrong, I guess. And let's be clear, I'm sure you're watching this video and you're like, well, Phil, I can run a half marathon in 2 hours. You ran a sub hour 30. That's awesome. And in the case of Boston, if you keep this pace up, you're going to do excellent. Yes and no. And that's what's the problem, right? Is that 1 hour 29 and some change isn't a big enough gap for me, especially how I felt at the end of the half marathon, to sustain the exact same pace on the second leg of the marathon. So that being said, I'm worried about this time when it comes to running the sub 3 marathon this fall. So couple things went wrong. I just said we weren't going to do more of this. First thing is the weather between both races, very different. It was a little bit cooler and overcast in 2022. This year it was a little bit hot and sunny. Weather does play a factor into it, as we're going to be taking in more water. There's more humidity while we're running, so that kind of factors a little bit, but it's not big enough for the fact that my training has been extremely consistent but incorrect, if this makes sense. So I'll put a screenshot of my Strava here somewhere while I'm looking at it here. But if we're looking at the same thing, or the same screenshot here, you're going to see from the months of March to April, the growth and volume of running fluctuates way too much, going up and then goes down in June, July, and then what you're going to see is there's like spikes in the June, July, August, September kind of areas here during the Strava, I guess, mileage calculator. And that's probably because of a couple of things. One, maybe there's more swimming. So that swimming in yardage could add a little bit of mileage to the runs. Maybe these are weeks where the running was going really great. And just overall, it's putting in some distance. But most importantly, there's also bike miles that are getting counted in this. So those spikes might be the times when I was biking a little more often. I put in like 20, 30 miles of biking. And as a result, you kind of end up having more miles on the Strava map. But I do like it because it's like fairly flat. And if you look at those distances, they usually cap at about 30 to 40 miles of running per week. Granted, some may have a little bit more because of the swimming or a little gradual bike. But I was not training at the volume of running that I would normally be comfortable with when it comes to marathon training. And that volume is approximately 50 to 60 miles a week. So I'm down almost 50% of my mileage, mostly because of, circumstances where I find myself sitting at home at work a little bit more. My recovery's not great because I stay up playing, video games on my phone or mobile games, whatever. If I'm, just staying up watching YouTube until the middle of the night or studying for something for work, there's like an assortment of things that are happening that prevent me from getting the right sleep, basically during the course of my week. And that does pay a toll on my body, I guess, as we kind of go along with it. Because, if you can't recover right, you lose morale to train accordingly. And then, of course, we have the Silverthorne training schedule, which I was better about managing some of the vices in my life. But at the same time, when you're training at 9,000 feet, now there's this thing going on where you're demoralized because you're trying to run like an 8-minute per mile pace, but your heart rate's so high and you're feeling unbelievably fatigued. And you just get demoralized thinking like, man, this really sucks running out here. So like the first couple of weeks in August kind of suck, but then the build gets a lot better, which makes me happy. And then, of course, by the time the Chicago Triathlon rolled around, the distance was much better. Obviously getting more volume at this point as I'm looking on the calendar, which sucks because I don't want my race weeks to be high volume, but they end up being the highest volume in my on my Strava calendar for the last 365 days or 52 weeks, however you want to look at it. So that sucks, basically, from what I see. But yeah, so the volume wasn't great during my training. I'm a little bit demoralized from, the Silco training camp stuff. And then the last thing, of course, is just, just distractions like I mentioned, like whether it's mobile games, whether it's just staying up on YouTube, watching stuff, working on stuff for work, training and like things like that. Oh, like work related training, that is, not like so much of this stuff. And it all just kind of, all the straws on the camel's back eventually cracks the back of the camel, and here we are running a 129, which in some circumstances is better than when I was in my peak shape in 2019. But at the same time, it's not better than what I did last year, where I was a little bit more focused and had more of a volume background to my training and could put in a more competitive time at this point. Because this time, believe it or not, I was within 2 minutes of first place at the time. So yeah, you might say like, okay, the winner ran like an hour 24 and some change, but like I was in a competitive spot where I could have won this race if I played my cards better. Whereas this time around, I ran a time that wasn't even competitive to begin with, because the guys who won first place, they were like hour 15, hour 16, so they were significantly better than this. But like my time got worse. If the time got a little bit better and like the field got better, who cares? That's one thing. But the time got worse and the field got stronger because I got worse. So that's kind of the deal there. So that's kind of the whole story and all the excuses associated with the times. But talking about the race itself, we can kind of go step by step, or just I'll give you like the brief summary of it. Of course, it's like I'll post the map here somewhere where you can see what's going on, but it is a point-to-point race with one loop that does occur at some point in the race, or it's like very close to a loop. But we do start in Crystal Lake, around Crystal Lake, and then there's this route we do basically around the lake to start off, and from there the race kind of unfolded like this. There's about 8 of us or 9 of us, in this big pack, and like the first 5-6 guys kind of broke off on their own. There was one straggler, and then there was me. And I knew right off the rip, like I wasn't going to run this race to race it. I was going to do it just to do the half marathon because I wasn't putting in that long run work during, the summer months. So I needed to know, like, hey, if I wasn't training distance before, I need to see what the half marathon is going to be for me right now. So I knew right off the rip, not trying to be competitive during this race, just I want to get it done. And the best way to do it, of course, to motivate yourself is sign up for the race, be accountable, and now you have to do it. Now you can't just wake up Sunday morning and be like, I don't feel like doing a half marathon because XYZ. You're like, nope, I signed up, I have to finish this. So I did that. The lady ended up signing up for the 7-mile run that happened that day. She was under the same camp of, oops, I signed up for this, now I have to do this even though I haven't trained for it. So we're both kind of like working, running uphill, not literally in this case, and basically that's kind of what's happening. So race kicks off. In the first 2.5 miles, I'm kind of running in no man's land, but I have visual of the lead pack and the guy who was maybe in like 7th place at the time starting to fall back towards us. And like I see him falling back towards me. His name is Ryan. We're now hanging out, and like for miles 2.5 to like 6.5, 7, we're basically running together because, he was trying to go hard with the lead pack, but he knew that like that was not the game to play. And he also probably figured out that running alone during this race is also a death trap because of how windy it is, and that the course does have a lot of twists and turns, and you should run with somebody who's done the course before to give you kind of like a good idea of what to do. So there were times where like he was about to take a turn where I said, nope, don't do that turn, we're going this way, right? So essentially we ran together at some point until we got into like the suburban area, which was like doing this pseudo loop. From your visual, it went like from the west, and then it went south, and then it went north into downtown Crystal Lake. And all that area is like marked with arrows, signs, and things like that. So Ryan was probably going to be fine on his own, and I knew I was going to be okay because what happens is we do the loop around Crystal Lake, and then we go through the golf courts going, I think it was south, or I forget what direction it was. But the 7-mile race starts 30 minutes after the half marathon starts. So in a way, we're going to see the 7-mile runners basically on the course kind of just guiding us, and in a weird, I guess, I'm thinking of the right word here, not in a malicious way, but in a more strategic way. You can use the 7-mile runners as like ways to draft, or you can leapfrog off them as you see them. And that's what I ended up doing during the course of the run, just because I knew that the wind was kind of silly during the race. There's some crosswinds in places, so I was just hanging behind a 7-mile runner, and then I would go around. And at about maybe mile 9.5, I saw the lady with her own group of runners in her the 7-mile pack, and I ended up trying just to pass them by getting around them a little bit faster than usual because there's a few twists and turns. I didn't want to get stuck in that pack, and I knew, of course, I can't look weak in front of the 7-mile runners because I'm doing the half marathon, so we got to put in a little bit of a surge. And you'll see on the map here that like there is a blue speck down here where I put in a bit of a surge, and then you see how the map turns from dark blue to essentially light blue, and the light blue is like where my pace is completely fallen off. Like I am struggling to get this thing done, and it's been the first time since the Chicago Marathon where I'm running a distance run that I would feel the way I do. But I know in my mind, like I can't stop, I can't turn this into a walk, I can't do anything like that. We just have to trudge on with whatever pace I got. And I think I got it down to maybe 7:15 or 7:30 pace at some point, which again, I know people are going to watch this and go, oh, but 7:30 is like really fast. Well, yeah, maybe for like the average runner, but I hold myself to a standard where I should have held that entire race at like 6:30 pace to PR. Because if I ran a 6:30 pace at 13 miles or so, I should have broken like maybe 124, 123 if I did well. Instead, 129 at like 6:48, 6:49 pace. I'm basically on pace for a sub-3 marathon, but I'm struggling in the last 5K of the half marathon. So you kind of see my dilemma here. It's that it's only going to get worse and worse as the marathon goes on if this is how my half marathon results are. So yeah, basically after that, it's just running in the sun, kind of hot, just holding on for dear life. And yeah, I make it to the finish line at least in one piece, but I am beat. And even to this day, we're about 48 hours after the race. Like, my calves are still kind of feeling like bricks. My quads aren't feeling too bad. They shouldn't have been sore much from the race, maybe more from like the hills and all that, but like they're okay. Calves are just kind of beat up. Ankles are not doing too bad. Like, recovery and mobility post-race was not bad at all. We had some hot tub stuff, some sauna. It's kind of chilling in the pool. I was doing some swim workouts just for the fun of it. And yeah, maybe today is the right day to go about 5.5 miles. Just kind of get back into the marathon block training and see if I can actually get past 50 miles this week. So we'll see how that goes. But overall, the race is fun. It's incredible. It's a good race to do before the Chicago Marathon, just to kind of get a half marathon assessment of yourself. With the main problem, of course, being that I'm the problem as to why the time was so bad. And like, I wish two things really in my mind. Like, one is that I can start spring all over again. That it's, you know, the first week of April, it's the week after the Cooper River Bridge run, and I'm already in the mindset of training for the Chicago Triathlon, the Chicago Marathon. I'm putting 50, 60 miles a week and pushing it up to like 80 or 90 like I did in 2019, where the results were excellent because of that volume being strategic, being slow, and being strong, right? And then there's the other half of my mentality is to not do the Chicago Marathon at all this year, because I'm afraid of just not being able to run the sub 3, because it's almost guaranteed based on this half marathon time that it's not happening. But at the same time, the third mindset here that I didn't discuss is what I'll discuss in another video, because I'm clearly over the time I wanted to make for this video, is that the Chicago Marathon this time around is going to be a jumpstart training block for the Tokyo Marathon in 2024. And that's going to be something we're going to discuss. Again, how the Crystal Lake Half Marathon is going to be the jumpstart for Tokyo 2024, and why the Chicago Marathon matters in this training block. So, yeah, I'm going to end the video here. There's still plenty of work to be done for the Chicago Marathon, for sure. I am still a little bit beat up, but I had fun during the race. I mean, it was okay. The race results were okay. I had fun overall, but I need to do better. And it's like totally my fault that the summer was just stagnant in terms of distance and I wasn't building it all up. So, yeah, if you guys got similar marathon or half marathon stories of knowing you're on a crash course to a bad result, you know, just let me know in the comments, I guess. But yeah, I will leave this here. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.